Let's be consistent.
Welcome to the Key to Consistency. I am your host, Rakia Collins, and on today's episode, we are going to be exploring the relationship between consistency and financial management. I think all of the episodes we've had so far have been relevant and been pertinent, but I think we can all agree that there are few topics that hit home as much as our finances do. Irrespective of where you are in the world, finances, your economic status, they really determine a lot, right? They determine the type of school that you can put your children into. It determines really the type of food you can afford for your family, the type of car you drive. It determines a lot. And so without diving too deep into other topics, I wanted to make sure that we got through one of the most important topics that we should be consistent about, and that is our finances, right? The way we look at money, how we manage our money. And so a part of today's podcast is going to be a mix of, mindset shifts and practices that we should make. And then the other piece of our podcast today is really going to be focusing on things that are considered tried and true methods that we all know we should be doing, like budgeting and saving. But hopefully, from today's episode, you learn something that you can put into practice in your own life. And so when we think about money management and really the ultimate goal of being financially successful, I want to preface that by saying that when people hear generally about financial success, a lot of different things come to mind. And the purpose of today's episode is not to make you think that we all need to have the same definition of financial success, right? Your financial success is very personal and very particular to your use case, to your beliefs, and to what you value, right? So anytime I say the term financial success, just imagine what that means for you. Depending on the stage of your life, that could mean different things. If you have kids, if you don't have kids, it could just mean different things. So just keep that in mind as we go throughout today's podcast. So of course, consistency is very key when we think about achieving our financial goals, right? It doesn't matter what your financial goal is, if it's to build wealth or reduce debt or to plan for the future. Maintaining those consistent money management practices is going to be the foundation of financial stability, right? And so before we get into any action items, I want to encourage you to really think about, what is my financial goal, right? Do I know what I'm working towards? And if you don't know what you're working towards, it's going to be hard to stay committed because you don't ultimately have an end goal, right? You can be the type of person who has a financial goal for 6 months, for a year, for 18 months, whatever that may look like to you. I would just encourage you to think about your financial goal. If you say, well, I'm going to spend the first 18 months and we're going to really chip away at this debt, and then we're going to shift into building wealth, or we're going to try to do a combination of both. Whatever that looks like for you, I would encourage you to start by being very, very clear about what your financial goals are, because that'll really inform the steps that you need to take to ensure that you're on the right track. Right? And so if you already have your financial goal, you already know where you want to end up, the next thing I would encourage you to think through is how you can budget and track your expenses to ensure that you're aligned with what that financial goal is. And I would say that it's important to budget and track your expenses, even if you're trying to build wealth or reducing your debt, right? Oftentimes when people think about budgeting and tracking their expenses, they try to associate that with one goal or the other. But if you're trying to build wealth, you need to be able to track your expenses. And if you're trying to reduce your debt, you need to track your expenses, because just like the saying goes, in order to make money to a certain extent, you do have to spend money, right? And so that's if you're going to build wealth, right? Reducing your debt. Of course, that goes without saying. You have to track where you're spending in order to be able to take that money from those purchases that are more extraneous or more luxury in nature and be able to shift that into kind of chipping away at your debt. And so when we think about consistent budgeting and tracking your expenses, it really should serve as the compass that really helps guide you towards your financial destination. When you know where your money is going, it can really help you make informed decisions. And I know for a lot of us, that's scary. I can say for me in particular, for maybe like right when I got out of college and maybe a few years even after that, it was tough for me to go into my mobile app on my phone and look at my account. I don't know why. Like, it was probably because it's like, man, you're not going to have as much money in here as you want to. I knew that I wasn't necessarily hitting the savings goals that I had at that particular point in time. And so it was just really something I was just nervous about. Like, it just made I just got butterflies. And so I would encourage you, if you're that type of person and it makes you nervous, I would say at least once a day, maybe up to twice or three times a day, look at your checking account. As crazy as that may sound, we're not necessarily looking for the amount to change. We're looking to break the habit of the fact that you find it difficult to deal with the reality of your financial situation, right? Because that's really what it came down to. For me, I was nervous because I did not want to deal with the reality of my financial situation. And if we're going to change our financial situations, we have to be cognizant of the starting point. And it doesn't help if you're nervous or if you look at your account, once a month, right? And you don't even focus on what's kind of leaving your account. You're not accurately tracking your expenses. You're not budgeting on a consistent basis. And so because you're not doing those things, you're not making the most informed decisions. And on top of all of that, you just have a blocker about looking at what's in your checking account. And so I would just encourage you, before we get into another action item, first, build the habit of whether you set a calendar alert on your phone and say, I'm going to look at my account today, whether it's the end of your day, middle of your day, whatever it is, but we're just trying to break that habit of feeling a fear or anxiety when it comes down to looking at what's actually in our checking account, right? I would also encourage you to create a budget, right? There are a ton of websites, mobile apps, and even Excel spreadsheets, if you want to just go regular old Excel, that will allow you to track your expenses and ensure that on a monthly basis, you're consistently staying within your budget and necessarily have to go over your budget and you're cognizant of what you're spending. I kid you not, just the habit alone of having to write down or type into Excel, hey, I'm about to spend $37.75 on this Amazon purchase. It will really make you think twice about spending that money on that Amazon purchase, because now you get to see, before you spend the money, I get to see, how is this going to impact my bank account? Right? And so it just kind of gives you that additional level of, do I really want to do this? It really helps you serve as an additional check to say, let me really pause and think about this before I actually do this. Today's episode is brought to you by the merch shop at thekeytoconsistency.com. I would encourage you to visit our merch shop to see if there's anything that piques your interest. One of the easiest ways to be consistent is to be visually reminded that you are on a mission. You are going to be consistent. So whether you pick up a phone case or you pick up a t-shirt, we have something for you. Again, that is www.thekeytoconsistency.com. And I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Awesome, guys. The next thing that I want to talk to you all about is going to be saving habits. the importance of saving, right, on a consistent basis is like planting seeds for your financial future. When we think about how we can save, it can be small, regular contributions to your savings account. It can be $5, it can be $10, it can be whatever you can feasibly afford at that particular point in time in your life. But saving over time is going to help you build a substantial amount of wealth, right? I would encourage you to set up automatic transfers to your savings account on your payday because it ensures that you're paying yourself before you spend your money, right? And if you are savvy and you want to have an auto transfer go from your paycheck to your Roth 401k or to some type of investment account, go for it. Like that's even better. As many different saving strategies that you can employ to make sure that financially your future self is still going to be taken care of. I say go for it. Go for it because you can never do too much in terms of making sure that your financial future is taken care of. Now, this may be counterintuitive advice, but consider, and this again is just my personal mindset considering the path that I want for myself. I am personally at this point in my life cognizant of how much I'm saving compared to how much I'm investing. I'm personally investing more, whether it's in business or whether it's in the stock market or just putting my money in different places versus just saving. Now, I would encourage you if you have nothing saved up, if you don't have an emergency fund, that is priority, right? Because at any point in time, you want to be able to make sure you can still cover yourself for a few months. But the moment that you kind of get that cushion built up under you, personally, I would encourage you to go out there and begin to look into other streams of income, especially if you only have one stream of income, particularly living in the United States in such a high inflationary environment. We know that having one stream of income at this point is played out. Right. And it hurts for me to say that because you're listening to someone who has primarily one stream of income and is actively working to change that. So I would encourage you to do the same. Right. And I'm not trying to push that on you and say, go for it. Don't just depend on your job. But I will say that there comes a level of internal security that you get when you know that your life is in your hands, when you know that your economic future is not dependent upon someone waking up in the morning and feeling like they want to fire you, or someone likes you or they don't like you, no longer have a position, right? And I know that for some people that may sound crazy, but you'll be surprised about what giving someone too much power can do. And so we want to make sure that while it is important, yes, to save, I'm not bashing saving, that when you get to a certain point, if you're going to reach any level of sustained financial success, you want to have a portion, if not your entire financial future in your hands by building multiple streams of income. So you're not solely relying on one thing. The next thing that I want to talk to you guys about is going to be the importance of reducing your debt. We all know that there is something about when that credit card balance is at zero that it just does something to you. We're not making payments on this. It of course helps boost your credit score when you lower your financial burdens. Of course, as you dig into your credit score, they tell you some debt is good debt. It's really about, making sure you can pay things off on time, and all of that is good. Right. And I'm not going against any of that. What I'm saying is there are some forms of debt that we have that we know, okay, I got myself into this because I was just being, as my mother would say, long-eyed. I was looking for something, didn't really need it, but because I felt like I needed it, I purchased it, and now I put myself in a position to have to pay crazy amounts of interest on something that wasn't necessary. And so if you find that you're in that situation, trust me, you are not alone. We have all made some type of impulsive purchase at one point or another, right? I would encourage you to develop a debt repayment plan and really stick to that plan, right? allocate any extra funds that you have towards really paying off the high interest debts. And so that may mean maybe eating out less on a monthly basis or cutting eating out altogether. I mentioned Amazon earlier, but I know, at least for me, telling on myself, it's too easy to buy things on Amazon, right? It's too easy with a few clicks of a button to have purchased something. And while that's my personal advice, you guys may have something different, right? It could be that you hoard a particular antique item that you just buy a lot of. It could be a multitude of different things depending on who you are as a human. And so I would just encourage you to think about your spending habits, think about where your money goes, and really think about how you can reduce your debt. Right? All of these different strategies are going to help us plan for the future, right? When we think about planning for retirement, whether we have emergencies or other future expenses, your car breaks down, you need a new tire, the kids are sick and have to go to the emergency room, like whatever it's important to make sure that we have a cushion of some sort. Because life is going to life, right? Irrespective of whatever plans we have going on in our lives, things that we want to accomplish, we know that life is going to life, and life does not care about you wanting to become a millionaire. Life doesn't care. And because life doesn't care, you have to be responsible enough to say that I am going to do what I need to do to set myself up for the long run, even if that means that I have to sacrifice. And on a slight tangent, but still relevant, guys, when you sacrifice and when you do things and make decisions that are best for yourself and for your future, do not allow family, friends, etc. to eat for free off of the sacrifices that you've had to make. And I know that that is tough because you love your family and your friends. They're close to you, but something has to be said about the people who build themselves up, who sacrifice, who do what they're supposed to do, end up giving it all away because someone close to you didn't do what they're supposed to do. And now they're leaning on you to get them out of whatever hole they've managed to dig themselves into. It's obvious if you've listened to this podcast for any point in time that my faith is in God, in Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. And we have to turn those type of people over to the source. God is the source. We are not the source. You are not responsible for sustaining someone else's life because God is a sustainer of all. And we can definitely turn them over to God and allow God to help them renew their mind and their relationship with money. One, of course, there is a spiritual aspect to that I just talked through. But of course, there's number two, there's some things in the physical world that they need to do as well to make sure that they really check their relationship with money and they're not putting money in the place of God. And so, slight tangent, guys, but just because I know from personal experience and from those people that are closest to me, listening to their stories, that is something that for people who have a big heart, a good heart, that you guys don't I say you guys as if I'm not included with you. But we don't necessarily put boundaries in place around when we're going to give and how much we're going to give and under what circumstances are we going to give. I would encourage consistency in that as well. Think about those questions. When am I going to give? Right? That needs to be consistent, irrespective of who it is. Like, when am I going to give? Under what circumstances am I going to give? Because you don't want to just give because someone comes to you with a sob story, right? Because now you're jeopardizing your own future. And if your future is connected to children, is connected to your spouse, you really have to be cognizant of how much money you're just giving away, because now that's not only impacting you, that's impacting your own family. And so, again, encouraging you guys as a part of planning for your future to really think about how these consistent money habits are going to be able to help you and help you have not just a good financial future, but also to be able to build better relationships as well. One thing that you'll note is the more you make, you begin to be in different circles of influence, right? And that's where the relationship piece comes into play. Because when you have stronger relationships with people who are like-minded, you find that things are just different, right? The things that you would talk about with people who may not necessarily be on the same level as you from a financial lens is going to be different. So I'll give a practical example. I have friends and family, of course, as we all do. And I've noticed that with my friends that are financially stable and financially secure, we don't talk about money. Like, we'll talk about money in the sense of, oh, I got this promotion at work, I got a raise. And that's pretty much the extent of it, right? That's it. But with those individuals in my life who I love, but when they're not doing so hot on a financial level, money is constantly a source of discussion to the extent that they don't have a certain amount of money. And so they always want to talk about money. And you'll find that money is not a great conversation topic. I guess I'll be more clear. The making of money and talking about business is a great conversation topic. But when we're talking about money through the lens of lack and poverty, that is not a great conversation topic. And that is not something that I want to be a part of. So that goes back to my original statement about relationships, is that you'll find that as you elevate financially, naturally, your relationships should evolve as well. And as they evolve, it is important to make sure that your mindset begins to evolve as well, because I'd hate for you to build these great relationships that are meant to be sustainable and help you prosper, but you can't build them the way you're supposed to because you're focusing on the conversations you used to have when money was such a hot topic for you. Right. So before we wrap up today's episode, I do want to give you guys a realistic story about building a relationship as it relates to money, not from a personal lens like I just gave you guys about my friends, but more on a personal note. So I am, as a part of the initiative for this podcast, also working on building a mobile application for, the App Store, for the Google Play Store, to really help us with our consistency. Right. And so in building this mobile application, I reached out to a couple of freelancers and had someone build a Figma for me. And if you don't know what Figma is, it is a great platform that allows you to do your UX or your visualizations or your designs online. So, of course, most of us have an idea in our mind in terms of how we want it to look, and Figma really helps you design it before you actually build it. And so I was working with a freelancer who I thought was going to take me from the initial design phase all the way to the mobile application phase. And so as I was talking to this particular freelancer, the freelancer said, hey, it'll be $20 an hour to do the Figma designs. And I said, okay, great. So if it's $20 an hour, he mentioned roughly anywhere from 10 to 30 hours or something to that extent. And I said, okay, so I ballparked it and said, so roughly the design phase will cost me approximately $500, give or take. He said, yeah, 500, give or take. So I'm like, you know what? That's fine. $20 an hour, whatever ends up happening. I'm fine with the max being 500. So we go into the design together of the mobile application. The Figma designs are coming out and they are amazing. I love them. Without much guidance, he was really able to give me the design I needed. And I'm paying him on a weekly basis because he's charging hours to me on a weekly basis. And so when the design is done, I ended up paying him roughly $300. And so he reaches out to me and he goes, I now need to charge you an additional $200 because you said $500. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, whoa, if you're charging me on a weekly cadence, I'm paying you weekly for the work you've done. Where's this additional $200 coming from? He's like, well, you said 500. I said the 500 was the maximum based on an approximation of the number of hours it might have taken you at most. Right? Not just because, hey, you said 500, I'm going to pay you 500. That's just not how it works. Right? And so long story short, after a few rounds of back and forth, I had gotten to the point where I was just working with this freelancer, and I had gotten to a point where I was just determined, I'm going to just find another freelancer to build the development piece, right? This freelancer was great for the design piece. It's unfortunate that we can't proceed forward with the development piece, but it is what it is, right? So I tell you guys that story to say the design piece was, again, a maximum of a possible $500. But of course, the development piece would have been a maximum of an additional $700. But because this particular freelancer was so focused on getting the full $500 out of a design, and rather than being honest and saying, hey, don't pay me on a weekly basis for the hours I'm charging you, I just want a flat rate of $500, that would have been preferable. But when you come back to me middle of the work and I'm paying you on a weekly basis based off of what you're billing me, and now you're like, well, I need to make sure I hit the 500, that's not good business. And it shows from a financial lens that you're more focused on the money than you're focused on the relationship. And because of that, you've now lost the entire contract. And so hopefully from that story, at least from a business lens, you guys can see the relationship between money and relationships, because it's never okay to put money to the point where I'm willing to sacrifice a relationship that could ultimately bring me more money, right? It doesn't make sense, right? So that was an experience that I recently had. Certainly taught me a lot. Outside of that exchange, it also taught me that there were other freelancers who are willing to do the same type of work for less money because they value the long-term relationship. They not only want to build the app, they want to be on retainer for mobile app developments, for being able to build whenever new updates come out for the app store. If there are bugs in the mobile app, like they're willing to say, I'll take a little less to work with you for the next 18 months. Right? And so again, just from a business lens, thinking about the shifts in mindset and just the different perspectives. And that was something that I recently went through like this past week, right? And so it's just been very insightful for me as a business owner and someone who's trying to start having different streams of income, to always remember and keep in the back of my mind that I should never put money in the place of a relationship. Right? That's not where money belongs. Money is a tool that is meant to serve a purpose. Money is not a relationship. Money is not going to be something that can open sustainable doors for me, right? And I want to put emphasis on the word sustainable, because a good relationship can open several doors for you, but there are doors that money alone will not be able to open for you. And so hopefully, guys, you learned something from today's episode as it relates to your finances. You learned about how you could automate your savings, how you had the ability to create a personal budget and really prioritize sticking to that personal budget. And of course, guys, lastly, I want to end today's podcast episode with a verse from the Bible. Today's verse comes from Proverbs chapter 3, verse 9 through 10, where it says, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce, of all you produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine. And so remember, guys, with all the finances and all the money that we're trying to make, we should never forget to honor God with the first fruits, with the tithe that we are supposed to be giving. So remember, guys, consistency breeds mastery and transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of The Key to Consistency. Wherever you are listening to this podcast, it would mean everything to me if you could rate it, review it, reach out to me on Instagram. Would love your feedback, would love to hear anything you like, anything you don't like. Please feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit from it. And until next time, bye guys.